Let's lead and live in a whole new way.
Hey, friend, and welcome to the Less Stress, More Joy podcast with Amy Leneker. It's me, Amy. And today we are going to dive into a topic that is important in every workplace. No matter where the workplace is, no matter what the industry is, no matter what the occupation is, this topic applies to every single workplace. And in my experience, this topic adds a whole lot of stress to our workday. So what is it? What are we going to be talking about? Feedback. And before you hang up, before you turn off this podcast, because you don't want to talk about feedback, hear me out. Because today I'm going to share with you some research about what helps feedback stick and what actually makes it worse. I am a certified mediator. I specialize in workplace conflict, and I cannot count the number of mediations I have done where feedback has gone entirely wrong. Someone attempted to have a feedback conversation and it went so horribly wrong and made things worse that eventually they ended up calling in someone from the outside, me, to help them facilitate the conversation. That's what we want to avoid. In my experience, leaders are aware that that can happen. They know how horribly wrong feedback conversations can go. And so there is a tendency then to just not do them, to just avoid them, to keep pushing it off until the feedback that you were going to give is no longer relevant. So let's not do that. Let's look today at how we can provide feedback and how we can receive feedback in workplaces without increasing stress. When we do it right, when done well, feedback conversations can actually increase trust. They can drive connection and they can improve performance. Feedback conversations, when not done well, do the exact opposite. And I have no doubt that you have seen this. You have either experienced it directly or you've observed it in the workplace where a feedback conversation destroyed trust, where a feedback conversation caused disconnection, and where a feedback conversation brought productivity and performance to a halt. So what's the nuance? What is it that makes some feedback conversations work so well and others not even close? Let's break it down. The first thing we want to do is let's look at the types of feedback in the workplace. Some people assume that there's just one kind of feedback, but there isn't. There are actually three kinds of feedback. And research shows that the most successful leaders, the most successful organizations, are the ones that provide all three kinds at the right time and at the right place. So what are they? This research comes from a book called Thanks for the Feedback. It is my go-to book on feedback. There are dozens of good ones, but my go-to, the one I recommend to leaders most often, is Thanks for the Feedback. It's co-authored by Dr. Sheila Heen and Doug Stone. And they do what I think is an incredible job of breaking down the three types of feedback and when we want to use each one. The first type is appreciative. And appreciative feedback is just what it sounds. It is letting someone know that you appreciate them. You appreciate their efforts. You appreciate what they're bringing to the workplace. It seems simple, and yet so many leaders don't do it. By the time I go into work with teams, there are some folks who say, I don't feel appreciated here at all. Or I haven't felt appreciated in weeks or in months or whatever the time frame is. We can't take appreciative feedback for granted. We can't assume that other people already know that we appreciate them. It's got to be a very thoughtful and deliberate type of feedback that we share. The second type of feedback is different. The second type is coaching. And while the point of appreciative feedback is to keep us motivated, the point of coaching feedback is to help us get better. It's when you recognize that there is someone on your team and you can help them do something better. That's coaching. And coaching does take time. I know right now, every leader and manager who coaches as part of their job, you're nodding. You're saying, yeah, it's time consuming. And it is. But the payoff is worth it. Coaching does take an investment of time. It does take an investment of understanding where the other person is, where you want them to go, how do we get them there. That takes time and energy, but it's worth it. That investment pays off in the end. The third type of feedback is evaluative. And evaluative feedback, this is the one that most people are thinking about when they hear the word feedback. Evaluative feedback, by definition, is that you are assessing or you're evaluating someone based on some scale. Maybe it is against performance measures, maybe it's against a job description. Whatever that metric is, evaluative feedback is saying, here's what the expectation was, here's what I'm seeing, and then if there's a gap, how are you going to close that gap? When you think about your average day, even your average week or month at work, how much of each of these three types of feedback are you giving? How much appreciative feedback are you sharing? How much time are you spending coaching? And how much evaluative feedback are you providing? In some organizations, evaluative feedback is on a cadence of 6 months or even an annual performance review. And we all know that that's not incredibly helpful. The time to hear about evaluative feedback is not when something happened 11 months ago. So yes, of course, in organizations that have the strict evaluative processes, still go through those, of course. And how are you providing that feedback at a more timely cadence so that they can actually do something with it? In addition to thinking about how much of these three types of feedback you're giving, it's also worth considering how much are you getting? Do you feel appreciated at work? How often are you receiving appreciative feedback? Are you getting the coaching that you need to get better? Are you getting thoughtful, intentional coaching? And evaluative feedback. Do you have a sense of where you stand? Do you know what to expect next? I worked for a leader years ago, and their theory on feedback was that no news was good news. And I will tell you, reporting to a leader who says no news is good news is not a calming experience. For me, I was always waiting for the next shoe to drop. I was always waiting for, oh, today's the day that I'm going to get all of this feedback that they've been storing up. No news is good news doesn't work, because in the absence of data, we make up stories. In the absence of data, we make up what other people are believing feedback could be. So you want to be really clear, you want to be really timely, and you want to make sure that you're using each of those three types of feedback at the right time and at the right place. I often get the question, is there ever such a thing as too much appreciative feedback? Can a leader ever go overboard? And here's my answer. Even the tiniest bit of inauthentic appreciative feedback is going overboard. We know as humans when someone's not being authentic with us. Even if we can't put our finger on it, we know that something just doesn't feel right. So if you are getting that kind of feedback, it's not working. That kind of inauthentic appreciative feedback works against you. Because remember, what we're trying to do is build trust, drive connection, and improve performance. And if what you're getting, you're not believing, if you're saying, oh gosh, here's another fake compliment, it's not going to do any of those three things. So can a leader give too much appreciative feedback? I would say yes. If it's insincere, absolutely. I would say yes if it's not specific. If you walk in every day and say, great job, Amy, way to go, Amy, it doesn't have any substance to it. I don't know what you mean by that. And there's a really simple way to tell. There's a really simple way to know if your feedback is specific enough. And here it is. Does the person know what to do more of or less of? Or what to continue doing? If they know that, if they walk away from the conversation saying, okay, got it. Yeah, you want to see more of this. Or, okay, you want to see less of that. Or I should keep on doing what I'm doing right here. That's how you know it's actionable. If someone says great job or good work or couldn't have done it without you, it's not actionable. It's a nice thing to say, but it isn't actually going to help me at work. So, actionable is important. One other mistake that I see leaders make a lot is they try to mix all of these three types of feedback together into some kind of mixed up soup. It doesn't work. When I was first promoted into a leadership role, I went to a training where we were taught how to give feedback. And this is going to age me because this is not taught in the majority of leadership programs any longer. The way that I was taught to give feedback was through the feedback sandwich. And if you've ever heard this term, or even if you haven't heard this term, the feedback sandwich is where you would say something good, you would compliment someone who works for you. Then you would say the critical or the negative feedback, the constructive criticism that you had. And then you would end with something positive again. There's the sandwich. Something good, something not so good, ending with something good. Well, here's the problem. Dozens of studies have debunked the sandwich method because it doesn't work. When high performers are on the receiving end of a feedback sandwich, what part do you think they remember? Do you think a high performer walks away remembering the little nicety at the beginning, or do you think they focus on the critical part in the middle? The critical part in the middle. And studies have also found that lower performers, they focused on the compliments at the beginning and at the end, glossing over the part in the middle about the improvement. So in both instances, the feedback sandwich doesn't work. And it's not a surprise when you dig into the research of how it came to be and you realize that, the feedback sandwich wasn't invented for the receiver of the feedback. It wasn't invented so that they could do their job better. It was designed for the person giving the feedback because giving feedback is uncomfortable. So if you can start with the compliment, end with the compliment, well, now it's a little less uncomfortable. But that doesn't make it more effective. So if you have been using the feedback sandwich, make today the first day where you commit to not doing it anymore. Commit to learning a new way that we're going to talk about that isn't the feedback sandwich. You can still begin and end feedback conversations with gratitude. Because that's really all the feedback sandwich was. It was a moment of gratitude or praise, then the real feedback, and then another moment of gratitude or praise. You can still begin and end with gratitude as long as you're connecting it to the conversation. Where the feedback sandwich got confusing is you would say to someone, great job on X, Y needs to be better, great job on Z. And cognitively, the person's trying to track, where is this going? I thought this was a compliment. Now it feels critical. Now it feels like a compliment. If you connect the gratitude and appreciation to that conversation, then it actually sets a really nice tone for the conversation. Quick example, you could say, Amy, thanks so much for making time today. I know that feedback conversations can feel uncomfortable or even awkward, and I'm grateful that you made the time. And then you share the feedback and you get to the end and you say, thank you for staying open today. I appreciate your willingness to have this dialogue with me, and I look forward to checking in next week or whatever. You'll know what the right things to say are. But you can begin and end with gratitude. Just keep it connected to the conversation. Don't lose them. Don't cause extra cognitive strain for them by bouncing all over the place. When you think about why we don't want to combine different types of feedback, it's because of that same cognitive drain. So if you are sharing feedback with someone, let's say that you have someone who works for you and the project is over budget, it's way behind, and maybe you're even starting to get complaints. You're hearing from colleagues or even clients or customers that the project isn't being managed well. And you're sharing this feedback. You're sharing what you've learned. You're sharing what you hope to see. That might be a lot for the person on the receiving end to hear. If you just jump into coaching, you may not have them with you there in the conversation. They may be flooded by what you're saying. They may still be trying to process what you're saying while you've moved into solution mode, while you've moved into problem solving. Here's what you can do instead. Instead of jumping into coaching, instead of jumping into problem solving, give the other person some autonomy. Let them choose. Pause and say, I know I just shared a lot. I know some of this might be the first time you've heard this feedback, so I just want to check in with you. I've got some ideas of things we could do differently. Would you like to talk about those now, or would you prefer that we come back tomorrow and start looking at solutions? It doesn't have to be perfect. You're not trying to have the ideal feedback phrase. What you're trying to do is build in a pause where that person can either say, I'm ready to talk about solutions. Yeah, let's do it. I'm in. Or they might say, I would really appreciate the chance to come back. I'd really like to pick this up tomorrow or next week or whatever the time frame is that the two of you decide is appropriate. If you don't do that, if you don't check in, if you don't get that verbal agreement, you run the risk of having an entire coaching conversation where they're not really listening. And not because they don't want to, but because if their brain is in a fight or flight mode, if their threat response has kicked in, they're not hearing you as well as they want to. They're not going to be able to remember the conversation as much as you want them to. So build in that little pause. And if you're on the receiving end of it, let's say that you're the project manager. You're sitting down with your manager while they're telling you that the project is over budget and behind, and they're hearing from people. Before they start jumping into coaching, it's also perfectly appropriate for you to hit the pause button and for you to say, before we dive into solutions, which of course I want to talk about solutions, I just want to get a little more clarity about what you're hearing. Or I would really like the evening to think about everything you just said so I can come back tomorrow and pick up where we left off. You don't just have to be the one giving the feedback to build in those pauses. It can happen on both sides of that conversation. One other thing that's going to work in your favor is if you have a built-in system to do it. A great way is if you meet with your team members one-on-one, if you have a regular cadence for one-on-ones, you can have feedback as part of those agendas. It becomes part of how we work together. Each time we're together, is there any appreciation that I want to share? Is there any coaching that I would offer? Is there evaluative feedback I need to share? Again, you're not going to do all three every time. That wouldn't make sense. But you've got it built in so that you've got this regular process of how to have those conversations. And hopefully you're inviting that feedback too. The most successful leaders that I know at giving really good, constructive, quality feedback are the exact same leaders who have created an environment where they get that kind of feedback from their team. It has to go both directions. There is no silver bullet. There isn't anything you can do so that every feedback conversation goes the way you want it to. But by using these tools, you can at least set yourself up for as high of a level of success as possible. So you don't have the anticipatory stress like I did that I shared at the beginning while I was waiting for a leader who said no news was good news. Alleviate that. Allow there to be less stress by having really thoughtful feedback conversations. If you liked it, please hit follow, send this episode, share it with a friend, or leave a quick review. It really is the best way to help other people find the Less Stress, More Joy podcast. You can check out my brand new book, Cheers to Monday, which comes out on March 24th, and it's available wherever books are sold. Reach out. We'd love to hear from you, Amy at amyleneker.com. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.